All right, welcome everybody to the Planning Commission study session meeting. We'll go ahead and start. I know that we're starting a little bit late. We only have one item on the agenda, so we're hoping that we can get through it in a timely fashion and then start our regular meeting. But with that, we'll be discussing case Z13-04. It's a recommendation to amend the Town of Gilbert Land Development Code regarding multifamily uses within a commercial district. So with that, we'll invite Ms. Amy Thames up.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson and members of the Planning Commission. In March of 2013, the Planning Commission initiated the text amendment for multifamily residential within regional commercial, and a steering committee was formed. It was a very diverse steering committee with landowners, developers, attorneys, staff, and a number of different members of the community, as well as the business community with the Chamber of Commerce and Gilbert Small Business Alliance, sitting down over the last couple months and discussing multifamily within regional commercial. So mixed use is allowed within regional commercial without residential, and it is allowed with loft residential today without a use permit. Multifamily is currently allowed today in regional commercial mixed use as a mixed use product as part of a larger mixed use development. But there have been no parameters set upon that in order to define what is a mixed use development, what is required to make it viable. And so what the steering committee was tasked with was to move forward and determine whether the use permit process was a viable process, whether it possibly did multifamily need to come out of regional commercial, or could there be additional findings added to the standard use permit findings in order to make it more specific for multifamily housing within regional commercial? Or was there a whole nother process that we hadn't even discussed as staff that could possibly help to define that a little more? Through the discussions that occurred, the stakeholder group found that there is a growing demand for multifamily in the town of Gilbert. The town should retain multifamily as an option within the regional commercial zoning district, and that it was a viable alternative in a regional commercial zoning district for obsolete commercial centers where maybe there's commercial on 3 or 4 corners and one of the commercial centers is failing, to be able to come back in and integrate mixed use with residential as the component into that commercial center to make it more viable. It also would allow for underutilized commercial land and land use properties to be able to develop with mixed use development, whether vertical or horizontal. Allow for flexibility in mixed use development. And in the end, they determined that adding additional findings to the use permit was probably the best route to go, and that also to have design guidelines that were based upon the capstone study that the Arizona State interns did for us several years ago would be a good guide to start with and define and determine the guidelines that those findings would be based on. So there would be 4 findings. They're on page 3 of your staff report, what is being recommended by the steering committee and staff. With the mixed use one, which is the first one, so, well, before I even get to those, I'll just remind you that right there are the findings, the 4 findings that are for a conditional use permit. They are that there's no detrimental to the health and safety, that it conforms to the general plan, it meets all codes, building code, zoning code, and that there's no detrimental effect and interfere with the enjoyment of the adjacent properties. So in addition to those, the findings that are listed on page 3 of your staff report would be added, just like we add additional findings for wireless communication facilities. So with the mixed use number 1, it would allow for convenient intermixing of uses, land uses. It would allow for alternative transportation, security for the citizens of Gilbert and for the residents of having eyes on the street and having 24/7 activity in areas. as well as independence for some people who are maybe a little more homebound or can't drive with an automobile. And it adds for a variety of uses and living environments and work environments within the town of Gilbert. Number two, the sustainability through compact design. This is really based on trip reduction, environmental factors, efficiency of infrastructure, and creating a community through intensity. Pedestrian scale and orientation. These are what we always talk about when we do design review and what makes a project comfortable to people who are within it. It is comfortable, it's safe, and it's active. And that's what the third one would be focused on. The fourth finding, transportation and connectivity, logical links for pedestrians. It allows for public transportation and reduced parking demands. You can have parking on the street, shared parking, and other parking options that are out there. In addition to the four findings that the steering committee is putting forward, staff is recommending a potential fifth finding, which is placemaking. A lot of times in other locales, you'll find this as public art, it's often called, or requirements that create public plazas, a place for community. It's a quest for community. It's a draw that's not necessarily a land use. It's a sense of place. And I was telling someone earlier, it's like you talk about the giant jackrabbits in downtown Tempe. It's a place where people want to go and kids want to play because there's something there that's interesting and comfortable and active and fun. And a lot of times it's hard to say what that is before the project comes forward because it's the creativity of a project that makes the place. So the steering committee was a little apprehensive about adding that as a fifth finding because it is a little bit subjective for each and every project. But if you look at these based on the guidelines, you can start to see the parameters and what creates it. Now, the idea of adding percentages to some of these or dimensions to some of these or minimum quantities is not something that the steering committee thought was a very good idea because once you start putting numbers to something, you're limiting the creativity of what could come through the door based on a preconceived idea that isn't necessarily the idea that the applicant has. And we don't want to limit that creativity because the idea of mixed use is to foster that creativity and to bring it forward through the idea of placemaking, which is actually part of every one of these other four findings also. Another finding that was potentially discussed was economics. It is a key component and a major heading within the Capstone project. Another heading could potentially also be surrounding and community integration. So there are additional main headings that could be discussed, but based on the outcome of the 3 steering committee meetings and research that Planner Melillo has done over the last 8-9 months, the 4 findings brought forward here plus the potential fifth are what we would like to have discussed tonight. We would also like to have your input over the definition of mixed use. And I'm going to put it forward as this is the definition that was in the ASU Capstone project. And it reads, mixed-use development is an efficient integration of non-residential and residential uses that cultivates a sense of community, live, work, and play environment. So we'd also like to know if this is a definition that you feel represents the findings for this use permit, and if you think that maybe we should maybe massage that a little or keep working on it. And then anything that you have in addition to the findings that we have here, and if you think we're going in the right direction, and if you'd like some more specifics or more research on any particular component. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Thames. Comments, questions for staff? Commissioner Cavney?
So Amy, I understand that, okay, with this, what we're saying is that we're going to allow the mixed-use component within regional commercial, and that we're trying to define mixed use. I think the only concern I would have is that we make sure we stipulate that in addition to being able to have the multifamily, it cannot be exclusively multifamily. And maybe that's assumed here, but I think years down the road, somebody comes in and says, well, look, I'm allowed to do multifamily. It's RC. Let me do it. They may not remember this discussion. I think we should somehow say that if we're going to do multifamily, it must be part of a larger mixed-use piece, and then it would be allowed by use permit. But
I will note one other point, that based on the definition of multifamily in our land development code, it allows anything from duplexes on up in intensity. I think a lot of people were assuming that this mixed-use multifamily would limit it to multifamily low or multifamily medium, but the actual definition in our code for multifamily is anything from a duplex and forward. So if we also want to make a statement regarding that too, or whether we're comfortable with that, and duplexes, townhomes, having that as part of a mixed-use development is viable, and in many parts of the country that is a norm.
okay, I just want to make sure we keep it mixed use, that it doesn't become a singular element other than commercial. It has to be combined. And then with the definition, I think it's a good definition, although I would also couch that mixed use can be absent residential. You can have a mixed use commercial, and so we may want to consider that as we think about that definition. Yeah, that's it for now.
So Commissioner Cavity, just to follow up on the comment that you made, just so that I'm clear, is your thought that, say we have a 40-acre regional commercial center, 20 acres is developed, the remaining 30 is undeveloped, and a residential developer comes in, is it staff's interpretation or thought and your thought that the developer could not claim the existing commercial and the to-be-developed residential as part of the mixed-use component? Or does it need to be included in one application, one plan?
Well, I think my understanding of why we're doing this is to make sure that this mixed-use concept is taking a foothold across the nation. It's a
Right.
really useful development tool, and I like it, but I just want to make sure that it stays integrated, because if not, it's going to end up being a multifamily adjacent to a commercial.
So that was my question.
Yeah, on RC property.
Are you looking more for more integration than, maybe it is existing commercial, but it integrates really well somehow with a proposed multifamily component? I think that was going to be some of the question.
I think if someone comes in with a 40-acre RC parcel and they say, we're not ready to do commercial here, but look, we're allowed to do multifamily, we just want to do multifamily, that use permit would not move forward because it doesn't meet that integrated.
But if there's existing commercial there, a small component of existing commercial, and a residential developer comes in and only intends to develop the residential, the multifamily, and wants to use the existing commercial as part of that, and maybe that was part of the steering committee.
Perhaps a case by case on that, but I would say that probably would be a hard sell because it wouldn't be integrated. It would not. It would not likely come together well unless they found a way to do that. And one other question, though, Amy, does this mixed use, does this multifamily part of mixed use, does it include condo? Is that considered part of that?
At this point in time, it would include that.
Okay.
Also, I'd like to add, I believe that the thought process here was that the mixed use would be part of possibly a planned area development plan, so that the uses in the plan is laid out as a comprehensive, so that we wouldn't have to say, well, you can't develop the multifamily till you develop the commercial. We know the integrated plan is laid out, it's locked into zoning. Or the other option is with the use permit, they have to provide a development plan that would be an exhibit to the use permit that's tied to it, and that's the development plan that goes forward with the property. And that's another option.
Yeah, because you could get the case where you get a non-mixed-use developer coming in saying, we want to do both, but we're only prepared to do a certain part at first, and then they leave, and it doesn't get done. So, yeah, we certainly want to safeguard the integrity of that mixed-use intent. Yeah.
It was not the committee's intent that a property solely, an 8-acre property, would come in and just happen to be next door to a Circle K and just happen to be next door to a Starbucks, and just that it would call it mixed use because it has proximity to other uses that were never part of its original site plan. It would be part of an integrated site plan that's been approved either through a master site plan or through a PAD or through an exhibit attached to the use permit.
And I don't know if this needs to be a key part of it, but my experience with mixed use is that they are structurally integrated, not necessarily separate buildings in every case, but in fact integrated into similar or the same structure in many cases, where, for example, the residential is above the commercial or something like that. So I don't know that you want to stipulate that, because there may be a great cause or a great case for perhaps a structural difference where it really works integrated, but,
And
Yeah.
Chairman Whitman and Commissioner Cavaney, that was discussed at the various meetings, and they were a little apprehensive about that because you don't know what's coming in that could be really awesome. But then there was the idea that if you have good integration between the uses, you have compact design, short walking distances, trees, well landscaped, sidewalks, the connectivity's there, you could take horizontal mixed use and make it work together by placemaking, by finding a reason to create a special place of community, not just there's one use next door and there's another use next door and there happens to be a sidewalk that connects them. That's not mixed use, that's just adjacent land uses.
Right.
So we're looking to go the step beyond, and we're hoping that the design guidelines would then help to create the parameters and the checklist, shall we say, for what would allow the Planning Commission to make these findings.
right. Thank you.
Commissioner Peterson?
Chairman. Because we are doing a use permit for the residential component, it is a case-by-case basis. So that, that brings that back to what you just said about it. And I'll use across the street as an example. The apartments that went into Gilbert Town Square they were integrated into a plan that was already there, but it is a street that you have to drive into to enter those apartments, and we approved them to go into that lot. Whereas if, say, Sonora Town wasn't there and the developer came in and wanted to put apartments on that corner because they connected by a sidewalk, that would be a whole different story. That's not the integration we're looking for, like Amy pointed out with a Circle K on the corner and everything. We want everything to integrate. We want everything to work together, and I think, like you brought up, everything would be on a case-by-case basis based on the use permit. What I looked at was a use permit gives us 4 findings, and I'm not comfortable just looking at those 4 findings and saying, okay, yes, this meets those findings, it can go in here automatically, because sometimes, from what I've seen, sometimes a project can meet those findings, but it may not be what I feel is the right project for that location, but it meets the findings, so legally we have to approve it. So this gives us a little more to work with to add some guidelines or some factors that the developers would look at to bring these properties to us to then look at the findings to put them in. So I hope that helps a little bit.
It does. Thank you. Further questions or comments? Commissioner Sippel?
Yeah, Commissioner Pearson, that was kind of my question. So if I understand this right, even if they were to meet the 4 or 5, maybe 5 findings, it would still have to come to us regardless.
Oh, yes.
That's correct, right? So I think that does do exactly what David was talking about, and it allows us to look at that case-by-case piece.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Powell?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it helps explain that when you look at the attachment 2, where it identifies the additional 5 conditions that have to be met on top of the original 4. So I think that would help give you some more comfort there. And then I have a question as well. Now, tonight, we're evaluating the amendment, the text amendment for accepting multi-housing inside the zoning for regional commercial, correct?
What we're doing is, Commissioner, is trying to define additional parameters. It is currently allowed with a use permit, but they were the 4 original findings. So what we're looking is to add the 4 or 5 additional findings to help add some more parameters. So when making a decision, Planning Commission has a little more guidance on what mixed use is.
Okay, then the actual language for the mixed use, the ordinance that describes what mixed use is that to be evaluated or discussed later?
Planner Melillo will be bringing this back to you in another study session, so it can be discussed now or it can be discussed later. All this will be further smoothed out, and more work will be done with the development design guidelines as to what the parameters would be for what would help guide in making the decision for these findings. But this is just a preliminary to kind of come back in front of you and let you know where work has been done to date, but we'll be following up with some more study sessions.
You know, I think that the work that the stakeholders, I had the opportunity to serve on that stakeholder group, and I think they did a very nice job defining this. But the one thing I want to make sure that we're carefully separating is the guidelines, the design, mixed-use design guidelines. There's 3 or 4 or 5 pages of additional language that aren't represented here. So tonight, we're simply evaluating the guidelines for approving multi-housing in RC zoning.
What is presented here this evening, Commissioners, is the findings, and then the design guidelines are yet to be finalized. It will be a combination of the ASU capstone project, and I think Mike, basically in the document you're referring to, was summarizing what some of those design guideline parameters would be, but the actual design guideline document may be larger than those 4 or 5 pages.
Chairman? I
Yes,
think tonight we're
Peterson.
just here to check in, basically, to see what way the stakeholders group has been moving forward and to see if the Planning Commission thinks that the stakeholders group's on the right track, and if there's anything glaring that the Planning Commission might kick back and say, maybe that isn't the right direction, I don't like that, can you look at something else? So we would give that back to Amy, and then Amy would take it back to Mike to take back to the stakeholders. So this is kind of just like a check-in. So far, not anything to make decisions on tonight, just anything that you might see that jumps out at you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bianchi?
Actually, I agree with the comments that my fellow commissioners did make. I do look at what the fifth finding for placemaking. I do think that's a bit subjective. I think that will actually spur some interesting conversations if that ever came up here. So, but when we first saw this in study session, my initial concern was, you know, with this RC zoning on a large parcel, does this provide a method for some developers to kind of bypass that public hearing process for multifamily? And that was one of my concerns. And if you're going to propose additional uses as well as multifamily as part of that larger development plan, I really think that this looks to kind of address those concerns. So I like the direction they're going.
Commissioner Ayler, do you have anything to add?
No, excuse me, I attended a few of the meetings, so I have a good grasp of what we're dealing with, and I think we're on the right road. I think a little bit on the placemaking, I think we might want to massage that idea and how we're dealing with it, because it is good to be vague with it, but maybe we don't get too vague where it becomes a tree and a bench. So that's just 2 cents on it.
Thank you. I know that I mentioned to staff yesterday, but I do have a couple of comments just for the record. But for the mixed use or mixed land use, point number 1, I think we need to provide some more clarity to that section and maybe define what we consider as mixed land uses, if we expect 2 different types of land uses to be included in that, whether it's commercial and residential, or if it's 2 different products of residential, or if it's office that we're looking for. I think we need to provide maybe a little bit more clarity, not necessarily specifics, but what do we define as a mixed use? And I know we have this definition up here as well, but I think it'd be nice to provide to the public and everybody else so that it's clear. Staff is looking for, or the town is looking for, an office and a residential component, or an office and commercial, or a commercial component with the residential, or a non-residential component with the residential. I think a lot of us assume that we understand what that is and would be, but I think it would be some clarity would be, I think, a little helpful in that aspect. And then through the sustainability through compact design, what's defined as compact? What are you looking for, I guess, was my...
Well, we were a little hesitant to put a dimensional linear requirement to it, but in Arizona, walking outside, 800 feet is probably what they consider the maximum distance for most people to walk, because it gets too hot by that point unless you have a really controlled environment with maybe misters or such, like at the mall. So with interesting out-of-the-box thinking, a longer stretch like the mall is doable in this climate. But if you're just with a few trees and a sidewalk, people aren't going to walk much more than an eighth to a quarter of a mile to get from one use to another. And even that, we were even thinking across a parking lot, they're not going to go too much further than a couple rows of parking, and then that's it. So you have to have a really comfortable place-made environment to get people to go for any distance. That's why when you're doing horizontal mixed use, you've got to look at that connectivity. You've got to make the proximity close, and that's where the compact design comes in. When you're in vertical mixed use, that's not as much of an issue.
Because I guess I was thinking when I read compact, my initial thought was, okay, you go up in density and you try to make the uses a little more compact in a specific area and provide outdoor space. But what you're saying is maybe not necessarily so. I guess it kind of depends, but I was just a little unclear on what
Once again,
we're looking.
close proximity, but without putting a dimension to it in the guidelines, we're going to have to look at maybe defining it a little more while still being flexible. So we'll study that a little further and see if we can define it a little better.
Okay, and the last one on the placemaking, I think that one seems a little vague as well. And especially if you're incorporating some sort of residential component, which obviously this would be, sometimes I think it's hard to invite placemaking and invite the public in to certain areas when it's primarily intended for residential and maybe office. And so I think I would like a little more information on what we're thinking of as far as significant public spaces. Are those dedicated open spaces? Are those parks? Are those just monument features for design? Kind of a little more information on that when it comes back.
And one of the other issues I might raise that was discussed was whether multifamily coming in with fencing around it qualifies as mixed use, you know? So is there ways to have on-street parking for your multifamily and still feel secure and only have maybe your clubhouse and pool area fenced in? If you put a wall all around a complex or a development, how is it integrated into the rest? So that not only is part of placemaking, but it's part of the overall idea of integration of uses. So that's another thing that we're going to discuss and keep discussing further as to how that would really work.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Commissioner Kavney?
One just follow up, another thought in line with that is that I think you'll find that most developers are going to want any residential parking to be secured. And so to require shared parking may be a hard thing for that. This overnight parking in a public environment is sometimes a problem, particularly for residential.
Good point. All right. Thank you, Ms. Thames. Any idea on when it might come back to us?
I do not believe Planner Melillo has set a date, but
Okay.
so I'll have to have him check in with you next month.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. All right, with that, we're moving on to agenda item number 2 on the study session, which is discussion of the regular meeting agenda. Vice Chairman?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to adjust the
I
agenda.
don't know if it's necessarily a motion, we're just discussing it.
Oh,
Just
okay. Well, I'd
discussing the
like to
changes.
discuss a motion that I
Discussing.
won't make. To the next meeting, to move 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, and 15, those items to the consent agenda.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the study session and call to order the regular Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, January 8th, 2014. It's New Year. With that, can we get a roll call, please?
Chairman Jennifer Whitman.
Here?
Vice Chairman Joshua Ayler.
Here.
Commissioner Anthony Bianchi.
Here?
Commissioner David Cavany.
Here.
Commissioner Bridget Peterson.
Here.
Commissioner Christopher Sipple.
Present.
Alternate Kyle Paul.
Here.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 3, can I get an approval of the agenda as modified?
Oh,
You want to modify it again?
Should we rock through it again, the changes on the agenda? Okay. Vice Chairman?
yes. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to move items 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, and 15 to the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chairman Ayler, a second by Commissioner Peterson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, moving on to agenda item number 4, communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters not on the agenda. The Commission's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. With that, do we have anybody here wishing to speak under those parameters? I don't see any. All right. Okay, moving on to public hearing consent items. Consent public hearing items will be heard at one public hearing. After the consent public hearing, these items may be approved by a single motion. At the request of a member of the commission or staff, an item may be removed from the consent calendar and be heard and acted upon separately. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent public hearing and approved under a single motion. So with that, we have agenda item number 5, which is S13-12. It's a preliminary plat for Higley Point. near the northwest corner, west of the northwest corner of Higley and Williamsfield Roads. We have agenda item number 6, which is UP 13-21. It's a request to approve a conditional use permit for a modification of existing wireless communication facility. We have agenda item number 7, which is GP 13-16, which is the epicenter, and that request is being tabled. Agenda item number 8, which is Z 13-27, also the epicenter, and that request is being tabled. And that epicenter is in Agritopia. Agenda item number 9, which is GP 13-17, and that's a general plan amendment request, which staff is requesting continuance to the February 5th meeting. Agenda item number 10, Z 13-29, which I believe is the companion zoning case to the general plan amendment. That one's also being requested for continuance to the February 5th meeting. Agenda item number 11, which is UP 13-20. It's a conditional use permit for the car spa located at the southeast corner of McQueen and Warner for also a wireless communication facility. Agenda item number 13, which is Z 13-32, and that is the Cooley Station rezoning request to allow, I think, a church building. Agenda item number 14, which is Z 13-35. It's a rezoning of 17.89 acres for the Ben Franklin Charter School. Agenda item number 15, GP 13-05. That's a general plan amendment update for this regarding the circulation map and the land use map. And it's mainly to show a future interchange at Lindsay and the Santan 202 freeway. So with that, and I don't believe I have any cards on any of these items for them to be discussed or pulled by the public. Looking at staff, no? No cards? We're good? All right, and so with that, we'll open the public hearing. Do I have any commissioners that want to make comments, or do I have a motion? I'm sorry? Oh, perfect. Commissioner Daniels is checking to see if there are any comment cards in the back of the room for us before we move forward.
Just a
Council?
reminder,
Yeah.
Chairman Whitman, before you entertain a motion, you need to close.
Close the public hearing. Thank you. I need those little reminders every now and then, more often than not. Any comment cards back there? We have one. I'm not sure which item it's for yet. Agenda item number 14. Oh, the Ben Franklin? Okay. Okay, with that, since the public hearing is opened, do we want to go ahead and enter? Well, I guess we can call staff up. Does staff want to make any short comment regarding the application? If not, we can probably just hear from the person wishing to speak on the item. Are you here to speak on Ben Franklin? Okay, I have Joe Goetz. Getz, can you please come to the podium, please, and say your name and city of residence for the record? And
my name is Joe Getz. I live on Orchard Drive in Gilbert, Arizona, right behind the Ben Franklin School.
Great.
I just had questions. I was going over, I don't understand a lot of what's going on in the zoning office. I just know that since that school went in there and was in the county, then instantly became in Gilbert, and now they want to change things. We had a nice residential neighborhood for farmers, for ranches, 1 acre and stuff, and the school shut up overnight in an R43 area, which wasn't supposed to be there until apparently they changed the rules 2 years ago that allowed them to put public institutions in the R43 area. And the school went on overnight, over Saturday, over Sunday, and there seems to be no provisions for traffic, for safety. We only have one street to get in and out of our neighborhood. We can't get out there during school hours. It's just totally cluttered. All during the day, there's constant recess and noises for the kids, which is going to be normal. But one of the biggest things I complain about is the PA system is blaring in the neighborhood where we hear it all the time. I'd love to see, you're not going to move a school, and we're not against public education, but nobody told anybody in the R43 that they were going to build that there. We would have had a talk long before there, but since it's there, we'll live with it. But we sure like to see something done in the city if they approve this to say some sort of traffic patrol in the morning, even if we put speed signs to slow it down, or curtail the PA system during the day, at least on the north side of the building, so we don't have to hear it all the time. It's horrible. It's just we had a nice little farming community, and now it's not that way. So probably has nothing to do with zoning, but I just want you to know there are some issues in the neighborhood, and I'll bring a bunch of people down if we have to. We sure like to just fix a few items so we can get back to where we were.
Absolutely. We appreciate your comments. Have you attempted to reach out to anybody at Ben Franklin to discuss any of your concerns, or?
No.
No.
They haven't reached out to us, and they just showed up overnight. But this is one of the meetings. I know you have one coming up next week again, too. And I'll bring a crowd. But these are just little things that maybe a gentleman's agreement could fix some of it, where they
Right.
turn off the loudspeaker during the day, put some traffic control in the front of the place. They've already had a hard accident. The first week it opened, they had an upside-down car that got slammed trying to make U-turns and stuff. So.
Right.
But I just wish it was like it used to be, but it isn't. But work with us. Let's try to curb the noise.
Thank you. What I'll do is I'll bring staff up, and maybe the staff can comment upon some of the questions and issues that you've raised. And then what I'd probably recommend is that you meet with staff to talk to them a little bit about the development. And is the applicant here this evening? Oh, Greg Davis. So the gentleman in the back in the white shirt and tie, you can meet with him, and he'd be happy to discuss. Again, this is only a recommendation. We're a recommending body, and it still has to be heard by the council. So there's some time between now and the potential final approval.
Just so I get to talk to somebody. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming down.
Chairman Whitman, yeah, well, I think probably what's best is we'll, get the neighbor in touch with the applicant and
Right.
maybe the traffic engineer as well. Went through the county and was developed through the county, and then we're annexing the existing facility. So I know traffic has worked with the school as well, our traffic engineering division. I mean, it did go through the county, but our traffic engineers are aware of it and worked with them. So perhaps just a meeting with the applicant and maybe other town staff.
Perfect. So just for clarity, it's only a cleanup item basically on the agenda tonight. It's not to approve the use itself.
No, correct. This is just essentially,
Establishing.
we just annexed it, and now we have to bring it into under town zoning. So it's rural 43 in the county. That's all they have, and it'll be SF 35 in the town for the school use, which is allowed, in residential districts, as well as we're bringing in the canal to the back. But
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any further questions or comments for staff? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais. Do I have a recommended motion for the items on consent? Anyone? Anyone?
I would move for approval of the consent calendar.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Bianchi,
Second?
second by Commissioner Peterson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, so moving on to the public hearing non-consent. Non-consent public hearing items will be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon by the commission by a separate motion. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support of or opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. So with that, the only item left on the agenda is agenda item number 12, and that's Z13-12. It's a request to amend ordinances and rezone approximately 17.5 acres of real property located within the Copper Ranch PAD, which is located south and east of the southeast corner of Warner Road and Recker Roads. And with that, we'll invite up Ms. Maria Cadavid and open the public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. This item was presented to you at a study session last July, on July 3rd. Since then, and I'm going to refresh the site and the general aspect of this application, that location that is irregular shape is the site on the very north boundary of the Gateway area. To highlight what the Gateway area calls for in the neighborhood residential land use and design policies, I have listed a few of them that apply. And it calls for encouragement development of a variety of and range of housing types, design grid street networks, link open spaces with commercial and other neighborhoods and open space, design developments with small front yards, setbacks, and provide all elevation of homes with a high level of visual interest. It also calls for providing narrow streets with separated sidewalks and landscaping planters, which we certainly do have, and provide recessed side entry or rear garages. So that is some of the policies and guidelines that apply for this area in the residential development. With that, I also want to show you the current zoning map. This is the last. All these irregular shaped parcels in the light 10 shows the current multifamily medium district designation, and the remainder of the Copper Ranch in different phases is the single-family detached that the applicant is requesting to be extended to this last parcel, platted as Parcel B or identified. On the right side, we have the aerial map, which shows the single-family detached that is built, the green space system, and the fact that it's all single-family detached, certainly with a different type of product, housing product, and lots layout, and the rest of the master plan. This is the current and the proposed zoning exhibit. As you can see, it's a very difficult layout for a multifamily development. Staff, since the initial times when we received the application and had conversations with the applicant, expressed their support of the rezoning due to the limitations on the development capabilities of the site. When we go ahead and we've been working with the applicant since the July meeting when the commission highlighted and also staff did the parking for visitors due to the layout, these pockets of 4 units, 6, 1, 5, and 1, 8 units. These are the parking exhibits that have been worked out between the applicant and his staff, engineering, traffic, and sanitation that demonstrate the availability of on-street parking. The spaces are not going to be striped, but they show where they can park. It also identifies the placement of the refuse enclosures and the recycling and the distances needed by sanitation from the parking usability and where the refuse enclosures need to be placed. There's another exhibit that shows the rest of the story, which is the eastern side of the development. It also shows the pockets of off-street parking that the applicant has provided since the commission saw this application, which is adding to the on-street parking 19 spaces in response to traffic concern for the placement of those parking in certain areas that will not adequately served. So these traffic and exhibits will be, if the commission recommends a favorable action and we go to council, will be adopted with the ordinance because it contains the placement that can be enforced later on by the HOA and will be referred in the final plat document to the ordinance. and there's conditions that state that. So these exhibits are being reviewed and accepted by Traffic and Sanitation Division, and meet the number of parking that was discussed and the several meetings we have held with the applicant. Moving forward, this is the deviations, the way that the applicant have presented those to us. And after several meetings and iteration of exhibits, we were able to identify how these deviations apply. As you can see, the size, the lot width, we don't have specific dimensions, but they provide 40 and 59. The coverage remains for single story, but these houses are going to be all 2 stories. Code calls for 50, and they request the 62, but only for, and that including porches and patios. They require or want front setbacks of 3.6, but only for the pots and lots, and I have included in the following slides how those work. 5 is a rear setback. The rear will be along the streets, which are public, that in the next phase of the project will be evaluated for compliance with the neo-tradition guidelines for this part of town. And 3 feet on the sides to the covered patios face of the posts, and those are for the center lots where we have, or they propose, use and benefit easements to maximize the space between the houses. The lot sizes, again, for the smaller lots only apply to 29 lots, which constitute 27% of the overall number of lots, which is 109. And the remainder of the lots go from 3497 to 4370. And the separation between buildings is 7 feet on the end units of the 4s and the 6-unit pods, which are the majority. They only have 1 8-pod and I think 1 5. Now let's see how these setbacks and deviations work in the actual proposal. The areas that I was able to highlight in the light olive green for me, I hope I'm seeing the colors correctly, the tan and the yellow intermediate tan are the private open space for those lots. This is the typical lots layout, which is the majority of the pods. So in the smaller lots, as you can see, are toward the center. The footprint of the house is indicated. The distance or the outdoor space for the smaller lots is, at this point, 19.6 inches or 19.5 inches, because these are the imaginary lot lines. However, the use and benefit easement will allow the property owner on this unit to benefit from this space. So the wall, the solid, which no openings, will be on this side of this unit. So, and all the frontages are toward the courtyard. The 3.6 applies on the end units from the wall to the property line. These are bathrooms on this end, and there's leaving a 7 feet separation between buildings, which is what they request. In other instances, they have 10 feet separation between buildings. They have larger private open space at the entrance of the end units, and what else? The other measurement that they require or they ask for is the 3 feet measured from the face of the post. But again, they will have to, in the next phase, do the deal with the building code, which will require fire rating and other, maybe even sprinklers for those units. But that's a different item beyond the entitlement discussion. So that's the 6-pack. Staff also asked them to give us information on the 4-packs. They have some of them along the record road alignment on the back. Those definitely have more space between the patios and the end walls, which have pedestrian access to all those green belts that you see in the development plan. And this is an important exhibit that the applicant provides to demonstrate how the use and benefit easements for maximizing outdoor space works on the smaller lots. And also, they show exhibits with the articulation of the rear elevation. These will be the rear elevations, and of the side elevations when entering into the pods. I think I skip a good exhibit that, well, the development plan that shows in color the smaller lots. It shows the green belts surrounding the lots, the pods, the 4 pods, the 6 and 8 pods. We have a backup laptop that have frozen here in the presentation, but you should have it. And so coming staff after all this work with the applicant, evaluating the specifics of the deviations and what is the percentage that applies on these lot-specific plans, recommends approval to the deviations proposed regarding setbacks, however, and the lot sizes, limiting those to 29 lots only, the darker tan in the development plan, however, requiring compliance with the footprint percentage, and that is the 50% on the footprint for the smaller lots. We understand that the applicant proposes, the owner or the builder proposes 4 plans. Only one of those plans is the one that meets the 62%. The applicant's representative will have more details about, and in fact, they have a presentation. But putting all the aspects of evaluation of this application together, the fact that the applicant responded to the traffic and sanitation concerns, and these divisions have accepted, not that is the most optimal, but they have accepted the proposal that the setbacks will not reduce the private outdoor space of the smaller lots. Actually, those are the ones that have more outdoor space. And the fact that when the council, by recommendation of this commission, revised the code, the land development code, to allow 5% above the footprint of zoning districts that were single-family 6 and above, and when the commission was inquired about why not to extend it to the smaller lots, they felt at that time that the lots were already smaller and that they already had a larger percentage of footprint or coverage. So based on all those aspects, we are recommending the approval, but maintaining the percentage of the coverage for all the plans. I don't know. We have traffic available for questions, engineering. I'll be happy to answer any questions. The applicant is prepared with a presentation. And what else we have? Well, I guess that is all I have to say for now. We have concentrated on all the aspects of entitlement and leave for the next phase what has to do with houses, sizes, and all that. But I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions for staff or comments? Commissioner Cavney?
All right, I'll start. I Thank you, Maria. Well explained. After having studied this quite a bit, I sure appreciate your explanation and giving more detail, particularly towards the use benefit area on those middle lots. That makes a lot more sense to me now that you've explained it. I still think it's extremely tight, but I do understand that the developer believes he has a product he can sell, so that's great. One question, though, with regards to the drive aisle, or the what's called a motor court. It's behaving like a cul-de-sac, in effect, right? And yet I notice it's only 20 feet wide now, but I understand it is on private property, so I don't know if we have any restrictions with regards to that. So that one question surrounding how we feel that behaves, especially when we have garages with virtually no driveway, and are we really comfortable with turning radiuses into those garages? And perhaps we are. My only other question with regards to that is at the end of those, I'm looking at the six-pack exhibit. That last home, as a car would back out of that driveway, they do not have the ability to back up and turn as if to leave. The rear of their car has no place to go. Even in parking lots, we create extensions where we have dead ends like that. So I'm a little concerned that there's no extension for a car to back out of the driveway or out of the garage and then leave. So those are my only two comments with regards to that.
Did you want to hear from traffic maybe on their thoughts on that, or since we're discussing with staff?
If that's who should respond, sure.
If you won't mind, because it's my understanding that traffic has reviewed the plan and approved.
Traffic was very involved in the on-street parking, the number of parking, the placement of those alcove spaces, engineering, discussed with the applicant, and Tom Condit is here by my side, and he have a better answer than mine.
Great, thank you.
Yes, hello, Commissioners. My name is Tom Condit. I'm the interim town engineer for the town. I haven't had a chance to meet you all yet, but I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight on this. Engineering did express our concern about the width of these drive aisles with the applicant. We talked in some detail. In fact, I've had some discussions with other municipalities on a very similar product to this, and the idea of a 24 feet being an absolute minimum width for an easement area is actually part of what the town has already adopted in terms of a zoning administrator interpretation. Talked about the idea of, is there any way that the applicant could give us a 24-foot street width and not just an easement width? And because of the layout of these particular lots and all, one thing they did tell me was that they were not going to install trees, that the additional 4 feet on the sides were just going to be decomposed granite and shrubs, so it would still make it easier for vehicles to maneuver in and around through that additional 4 feet on the sides. They also mentioned the fact that from driveway to, or from garage door to garage door, there's actually 27 feet. Again, I feel it is very tight. I'm going to be looking at possibly modifying our standards in the future to require 24 feet as a drive aisle and not just a utility easement. But because of the fact that they said they were not going to put any trees, and it would be DG in the 2-foot easement areas on both sides, we felt comfortable allowing them to go forward at this time. As far as the cul-de-sac at the end, again, given the fact that there is no parking on these streets or these alleyways, it will just be an entrance and an exit for the folks entering their houses there. Again, understanding the concern about possibly having to do a 3-point or maybe even a 5-point turn with some of the very largest vehicles. I do understand it's tight. I believe the turning radius is minimally adequate for vehicles to be able to make those movements.
Well, I think in addition to that concern, obviously it looks like, according to this exhibit, as though they would be backing onto a pedestrian sidewalk in kind of a blind situation. And so I see a real problem there. I see a unique problem.
Are there any sidewalks adjacent to that drive?
I'm talking about the sidewalk that goes between the two, at the very end of the 6-pack. the sidewalk
Oh,
that
got it.
goes directly through, that last car in each of those two homes would back up and start to back down that sidewalk in order to make that turn out of there. And that's a blind sidewalk because it's only 7 feet between those buildings.
Got it.
So you're really creating a tight environment where a driver will not see what's there. So, I think this relates to, and obviously we're past some of the parking issues, and I understand that we've done those in study sessions, but I think we're dealing with setbacks tonight, and this relates to setbacks because the buildings are where they're at because of the minimal setbacks. And so, anyway.
One way that we could mitigate that, and I'd have to talk with the applicant about this, but we could potentially put up some bollards or something to prevent cars from making that turn into that sidewalk area, so they basically have to come straight out and then make the turn out of the driveway.
Yeah, then we'll just have damaged bollards. All right. Yeah, that's fair. Fair comment, but yeah.
I think we have some additional questions for you, if you don't mind staying up for a minute.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Vice Chairman Ehler?
Yeah, I was looking at the overall plans, and I guess a couple questions. I don't know if you also deal with the trash portion and where they're located, but in dealing with the, between those and a few of the parking spots are located in vision triangles. So I just didn't know how that was looked upon.
I think I'll invite Mr. Guderian to come up and address that comment.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
Okay. You install it. Where is it? No, it's not.
While we're waiting, it's very nice to meet you, Tom. We're glad you're here. It's a good introduction, huh? I feel like we need to play some on hold music or something.
It's not the right
Okay. We will have the packet loaded in another iPad.
Okay.
This one doesn't fit in the other, and we have a frozen laptop here.
Oh, good.
Technology.
Wonder. Usually when I reset mine and turn it back on, it usually works. A hard reset, but you never know with those iPads. So we'll let the town traffic engineer chime in over Maria if you'd like.
I'll reach over. Good evening, Commissioners. Eric Guderian, Town Traffic Engineer. I think we've reviewed the parking and the trash. In all our residential areas, we allow on-street parking to essentially encroach into the site triangles. It's a movable object. We don't put signs up at every corner saying no parking from here to the corner. Just that'd be way too many signs.
So these are designated spaces, though, right, that they're using towards their parking calculation?
They are, and I think they're
Not visitors?
They're showing them as spaces. They'll be used for visitor parking and public parking. It's on a public street. There won't be any striping designation out on the street as far as.
They're just showing how they get to the number?
They're showing where those spaces are located.
So you're saying we can park even on like the corner triangles? I mean, I don't see a point of the triangle if you're going to park a car right on the corner.
Well, I think.
Because they're parking here overnight.
It's, this is what happens in all residential locations. We don't have an enforcement or no parking signs up.
Okay. And then what about the sanitation? Are we designating area for those, or are we just saying there is room here?
No, Vice Chair Euler, we will be signing those locations as no parking locations, so that sanitation for both trash and recycle, those will be the designated areas.
Okay. And then I had also some questions from Maria.
Is there anybody else that has questions for the town engineer while he's up here? I'm not getting a response, so I take that as a no. Go ahead with any questions you have for Maria.
Yeah, I guess I need a little help understanding the definition between, you talked about front setbacks for the pods. Are we talking about like the 6-pack and the 4-pack? I wasn't quite understanding what the definition of a pod is, I guess.
Madam Chair and Vice Chair Ayler, let me see here. Signal. Curtis, I need your help now. Is it? Okay. These are the traffic exhibits that the town traffic engineer was talking about. When we refer to the 6 packs, these are the 4 units pods. The majority of those 4 packs are along to the east side of Recker. The pods are all these, each a group that contains either 6, 4, and there's only one that has 8 and one with 5. So that's what a pod constitutes. So when we say that let's see, that the setback is for all the units are in the fronting onto the courtyard. So the front setbacks is to the center line of the alley of the motor court. In that section is where the applicant requests the 7 feet. So that's what we refer as to only on the end units or end units in those pods. Those are the end units. These and these units front onto the motor court, so that's the street units. On the 6 units pod, all of them the same scenario with the 7 feet on the end units of the pods. In the center and the lower on the screen, we have 13.6 inches of front setback on each side. So that's why we say only applies to the end pods units.
The setback is within the utility easement?
So,
It took us a while to.
I guess why you have this one on this is a good example of trying to understand. So for a separate question that's dealing with the setbacks is, so you have your brown area that's kind of in the middle area, tan, brown, orange.
Right, the one right
in the middle.
next to the number 11.
So you have, those are imaginary lines?
Correct. Those lines is what is called use and benefit easements, or zero lot lines. Once a resident or property owner who comes out to their patio, the wall will be back there at this location, not here.
So there's no wall at that line?
That's
so you
correct.
So that just walks
That's
right there.
correct. The only wall in this spot will be the end. They even call it masonry wall. But between these 2 units, the outdoor space for the center lots will be all the way to the wall of the end unit sidewall. However, setbacks are measured to property lines.
Right.
That's correct. That's correct.
No windows, Maria?
No windows for that area. We have several developments that have that approach already built in town. And when the applicant also has submitted this character exhibit, and the applicant will show more of these nice pictures, this is the concept. You come out of on the top left, you come out of the patio, and you don't have the property line maybe by the table, by the coffee table, but the wall, it is way beyond where the next unit is located. So it's a lot of specific plans. They have to do so in order to achieve this. As I said, the setbacks are measured to property lines, but that's why they are proposing these use and benefit easements, and we have that kink on the property lines.
Thanks, Maria. Commissioner Peterson?
Chairman, I have a question. Maria, the exhibit that you showed that has the 6 and the 8 and the 6, I think it's kind of brown and yellow and green. I'm wondering,
The development exhibit that has the overall?
I'm wondering, I mean, you might not even need to go to that exhibit. My question is, with the 4-pack, it's not so bad. Those people have to roll their garbage cans out to the curb. On the 8-pack, where do those people take their garbage cans?
The 8-packs will have to come all the way down and in this corner. That is why in the parking exhibits, and let me move this, in the parking exhibit that sanitation reviewed, all this area is voided of parking and will be only for the placement of that. Yes, they will have to.
So the
go all
people,
the way.
if you can look at the screen, the people that live in this 8-pack here, they would have to roll their garbage can out here?
To the corner, to the curve line. That's the only 8-pot that is
They don't have trash.
proposed.
That's not going to happen. That's not realistic everyday life for somebody to have to roll their garbage can all the way out here.
You can see the placement of those. They have identified where they go to serve all these units.
So right here, then, they're going to roll to,
Yes.
I can't
There's
see.
a sidewalk here, but
Right here? There. Right there? Oh, come on.
Or to the north.
Can they go to the north out of that 8-pack up here? No, because they run to
No,
a...
it's gotta go to the
So
street.
they have to go up there.
It
So
can't-
then they're going from,
It might be their exercise for the day.
they pick up, I think, once a week and
Right.
then for...
Twice.
Well, for trash and-
Twice a-
recycle one day and garbage another day, just like the rest of us in the town of
Right,
Gilbert.
right.
So I'm just,
Your Honor.
The other ones are well-served right in front, outside, and that's the scenario for every development of this nature in town.
I know, and the 6-pack to me is stretching it as far as where they would have to roll those garbage cans out to. The 4-pack is not so bad. That 8-pack is, to me, is unrealistic as a homeowner as to how far I would roll my garbage can from my unit out. And, I mean, and bring it back and then have to do it again a couple days later because we have recycle and garbage 2 separate days. So, I don't know. That's just something that caught my attention.
I agree. Commissioner Sippel?
Maria, yeah, question, since you've got that up. So, like lot 73 and 70, we've talked about side yards. What's the setback between the back of a house to the next back of the house?
The back of the
Like
house
73
and
and 70, what's the difference, the distance between the two houses there?
it will be 10 feet because the rears are requested to be, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Bianchi?
Maria, have we seen a product similar to this in the town? Do they have this currently in Cooley Station or something similar, or is this kind of a new product or design?
It
we're
is,
seeing?
we have several developments in the Gatewood area with this alley loaded. And we also have older development where they have these arrangements.
But is it with the variations requested, or is it with the standard SFD standards?
For example, in the Gatewood area, we have the Cooley Station, for example. They have smaller lots by ordinance and a 55% of coverage. That is Cooley Station, a separate PAD larger than this in the Gatewood area. However, the two most recent single-family detached developments, one being Fulton Homes and parcel 15, and another builder on parcel 12. They did not deviate from the already by ordinance allotted footprint or coverage at 55%. So to compare apples to apples in the Gateway area, two different PADs.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for staff? Okay. With that, we thank you, Maria, and we'll invite up the applicant. Mr. Curley, we haven't seen you here in a while. If you could give your name and city of residence for the record.
If you could just give me a minute.
Absolutely. We'll play the hold music again. Anybody want to sing?
Yes, that's come out of this. And show. And the show. Okay, close that. Take care of this. Take care of that. Okay. Now, this. Great. Let's go to the computer. Okay, computer.
My family's in the back of the room. They are, yeah. My daughter, her boyfriend, my sister, her boyfriend.
Where is this now? Planning on Shaggy with devices with remote storage. That gotta be yours, right?
Make sure you plug in and you're ready for a monitor.
Wait. Let me see. Where is your? This should be yours, right? The HP. Fine.
Final.
Yeah, this is better than apartments, right?
Copy.
Yeah. I mean, condos are condos, and that's what he's building. He's building condos.
Or you can open it from
And,
there.
and the nice thing is, it's
Just one final. Okay, now
Plug us in.
plug us in where? Okay. Okay, are we okay?
There you go.
Okay, let me see a slideshow from beginning. Okay.
See if I can.
You can manage
Mine.
just that. On paper won't work. On this one, if you need to talk, you talk on this one. And if you need to show, okay? Chair, I'll bring you.
No,
chair.
I'm good. Thank you.
Let's go to the first one, right? Just to make sure it's there.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So if you could give your name and address.
Chairman,
Record?
for your record, my name is Mike Curley. My address is 3101 North Central. Let me begin by saying this is not going to be a short presentation. I'm going to try to make it as brief as I can, but obviously the commission's got quite a bit of questions, and I want to be sure to respond to them. And again, I want to begin by acknowledging the obvious. You know, this is a different project. It's a project that a lot of us are not unfamiliar with. It's unique in a lot of its characteristics. But I think as I go through this presentation, I think that you'll agree with me, and I really have tried to look at this objectively. I think that the product and the project that we're talking about tonight, it's a very appealing alternative housing situation for these small lot type of developments. For example, and I know there are maybe characteristics associated with them that are different than what the typical single-family situation exists. But for example, the sanitation, the condition where the one cul-de-sac or the one 8-pack that we talked about out, and by the way, there's one 8-pack in this 17.5 acre site. The distance between the farthest unit and where you're placing the garbage, it probably is half the distance of what exists right now in the existing Cooper development, and I'll show you an aerial in a minute, but right now, I mean, obviously people who are buying this type of product go in there with a slightly different mentality than just single family, but again, I'll talk about that in a minute. Maria, I think, did a good job of explaining some of the characteristics of this development. I'm going to repeat some of the points that she made. I have some different graphics because I understand personally that this is a hard concept to get your arms around. It took me a while to get the study, so I tried to create some graphics that will simplify some of the discussion, and if you'll bear with me, I'll go through that. Secondly, just as a prefatory comment, I mean, we have spent a lot of time on this project. I mean, even before we were scheduled to go in July, we had obviously spent 6 to 8 months on this project. We think it's a well thought out project. In answer to one of your questions, this project has been built extensively in California. I'm going to show you some photographs to help you visualize what the product is going to be. And the product, as I'm going to show you, is that's been built in California, extremely attractive, extremely successful, and it is being brought to the Valley as an alternative to some of the smaller lot concepts that have been developed in the past. That notwithstanding, and again, for the last 6 months, as Maria has indicated, we've spent a lot of time with streets, we spent a lot of time with traffic, we spent a lot of time with the trash department in terms of making modifications to the plan to address the specific concerns. And we're coming into this meeting with the understanding that, at least as far as staff is concerned, that that while there are some situations that are tight, that they are supporting this. But having said that, if there are still some concerns that you have, we stand ready to make changes as we move forward. So with those sort of prefatory comments, let me just sort of walk you through the project. So again, obviously, as Maria has indicated, this is the 17.5 acre site. It's 17.5 acres out of the whole master plan, which was basically an 80 acre site. All of the streets are in, the infrastructure is in, curb gutter is in, and what we're basically doing is, let's go to the next one, Rick, that we're substituting a triplex approval that was approved in 2004. This triplex situation is what's approved on the 17.5 acres. This is a unit, it's alley loaded. There were 3 garages here. There's a unit above these 3 garages. There were 168 of units approved. You can see that basically there are 12 cars per what we'll call pod. There are 12 garage spaces per pod. We're reducing it from 168 units down to the 109 units. And instead of the 12 pods, let's go to the next one, Rick. This is what we're basically proposing. Instead of 12 per pod, we basically have 6. The triplexes obviously had garages. The size of the units were roughly about 700 square feet. Let's go back one, Rick. The unit that would be sitting above these 3 parking garages was a 1-bedroom unit, and these other 2 units could be between 1 and 3 bedroom units. I was not at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting when it took place in July. I was hired slightly after that, although I've represented KB in the past, and I'm doing 2 of these projects in Chandler. There's one that I'm going to be referencing that was built up on, or is being built right now up in Phoenix, that I was involved in up on Tatum and Greenway. Kaufman and Broad is looking at several other locations. So after I was hired on this particular case, after the July meeting, I sat down with Maria, I reviewed the minutes to try to gain an understanding of what the commission's concerns were. Obviously met with the planners from Kaufman and Broad, who are both here today, Chris and Andy, who are available to answer some specific questions that you might have. But the bottom line is, even after I got done meeting with all the planners, with Maria, with K&B, I still had some difficulty understanding some of the nuances of this, and I've been doing this for 30 years, and I've represented over the course of the 30 years all sorts of smaller courtyard, cluster, rear-loaded alley type of development. And so if there's some difficulty in understanding this, I shared it, and the use and benefit easement and how that worked is definitely a new type of concept. And so since I was involved in these different projects, I really felt that I needed to get my arms around this project and this product as best I could. And so I flew out to Irvine to actually look at the product in place. And this product has been built for a number of years. These are the products that I've visited in Irvine. They're projects that that are not being built right now. They're completed. And I spent an entire day walking with the project managers, looking at the models, looking at the occupied units, looking at the open space, understanding the setbacks and the use and benefit. And I came away, and obviously, I may be somewhat jaded when I say this, but I came away from that project extremely impressed. And one of the things that became very apparent to me is that when you look at the site plans here that we're dealing with when they're one-dimensional or two-dimensional, they really don't do it justice, because you have to visit or see photos in order to really comprehend the project, the architecture, and the open space. And so, going back to what I said, with your indulgence, I'd like to show you some photographs of the Irvine product and also of the Phoenix project that's under construction right now. These are apples to apples comparisons, and by that I mean they're identically dimensioned, they're identically sized. I mean, there are different sizes between this 17 acres and the Irvine project, but the lot size are the same, the setbacks are the same, the open space that I'm going to show you is the same, so it's an apples to apples discussion. And when I say that I'm impressed, let's go, Rick. One of the things that really impressed me is the architecture. And I think that really is one of the unique aspects of the product. And what you're looking at here is representative of what's being done in Phoenix and what we're proposing on the particular location. And if you can just look at this, I think everyone agrees that there's a tremendous amount of movement in the building. There's recesses, there's accent features. It's not garage dominant, which is oftentimes the case on smaller lots. So let's go to what is a typical six-pack. So the photograph that you just saw are these units that I'm going to call the front-loaded streets. So these are the units that actually front onto the public street. This is obviously the drive aisle. And so the photographs that I'm about to show you are these particular units, which again, the garages are right here, obviously, as you come in up the court. So when you're driving down the street, you're seeing architecture rather than a typical garage section. So Rick, go to the next one. No. Okay, I'm sorry. So, and the pictures that we're about to look at are all of these units that are, again, front onto the public street. So, Rick, let's go to the next one. So this is in addition to the first photograph you saw. This is what you're seeing from the street. Next one, Rick. This, again, is what you're seeing from the street, and you can see as you come in the alley court, you're parking in the garage here. Next one, Rick. The next one is the middle units. And again, this is sort of the use and benefit easement. I'm going to go through that in a second, but this is just an architectural review of what we're talking about. Rick, the next photo. Okay, so again, this middle unit, this middle section of the photographs we're about to see are obviously for these middle units. And this is a typical house. Obviously, there's different features per different courtyards, but this is the typical architecture you're seeing. And then the next one is the end court unit right here, Rick. And again, this is sort of the unit that you're seeing. This is the projection that that was one of the deviations that we're seeking for, is to have a 7 foot distance between this element and what would be across the courtyard. And this was sort of the walk area that one of you were referring to in terms of the backing out of that garage. So the architecture, that sort of gives you a flavor of what we're dealing with. And again, we're doing the same product in Phoenix and the same product what we're proposing here. Next one, Rick. And again, this just sort of gives you an overall streetscape of what we're looking at. And again, these units being the street units that are facing the public street. The next, I'm going to spend very little time on the interior, but there was an aspect of the interiors that really struck me. And this same element, this is from the Irvine product. I'm going to show you photographs of the Phoenix product in a second that illustrates the same component, the same floor plan. This whole area basically is fronting out onto the open space that I'm going to call the rear yard. It may technically be the side yard, but it's really where this area opens up out onto. And these doors basically fold all the way back, so there's an extension. This is the great room, and the kitchen is right to the left of where the great room would be. But these doors open up, Rick, if you could open up, and so there really is an extension of the living space out into the outdoor area. Very unique and really a very, very pleasant type of environment, and I think something that we think that's going to be very appealing. The outdoor spaces, again, these, Rick, if you can just flip through, these again are just the outdoor spaces that correspond to the different units. Again, what these photographs are going to be is of these areas right in here. And these are, again, taken from the Irvine. Next one, Rick. This is, again, Irvine. And just while I'm on here, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but if you can just remember this shot in terms of the use and benefit easement, because technically, when I'll go back to the lot line for this particular house, but the lot line basically is right about here. This is where the technical legal lot line occurs for this lot. This area over here is the use and benefit easement. This area is basically is a first story, no window, and it says, in essence, it functions as a wall that creates a courtyard in this area. And I myself and one of the guys in my office, we took these photographs here. And when you were sitting in this courtyard, it just couldn't have been a more pleasant environment because it's a totally secure private area. But this, again, if you can just remember this photograph, this is the illustrative of the use and benefit easement. And again, these dimensions are accurately reflected in what we're doing in terms of the dimensions of our outdoor space. So the next one, Rick. And again, this is sort of the side of, as when I go back to the site plan, this is the side area that is the area that you just saw is right over here, and this would be the side area. Next one, Rick. These are the Phoenix products that are under construction right now. I'm just going to flip through it again architecturally. You can see the similarities between this and the Irvine product, and then again, this is the open space patio areas in the Phoenix product. Again, identical to what we're doing, Rick. And again, this is, again, dimensionally accurate. So I think that sort of gets you to some of the macro issues. I realize that a lot of your questions deal with minute aspects of this, but I'm just going to end this portion of the presentation with just sort of the threshold question that I was asked at the beginning, and that is, is Gilbert benefited by this project? I would submit yes, and obviously, I'm prejudiced, but I'd say the following in terms of just a macro review of the plan, and that is we're reducing the density from the existing triplex 169 density down to 109. And by the way, K&B owns this site. They're not buying it subject to escrow, so they've got to do something with it. We think this is a much better alternative, but just in terms of the overall benefit, obviously a reduction of traffic, a reduction of parking. From an architectural standpoint, I'm not going to say anything more. I mean, to me, the pictures speak for themselves, but I think from a quality standpoint, a quality product standpoint, from a macro view, we think that this is a good product. Turning to the deviations, and I'm going to ask the chairperson or the commission on this. There are about 6 or 7 deviations, and I'm prepared to go through each one of them. And again, because of the complexity of the site plan, that's my intent. If you think that that's more detailed than what you want me to, then stop me. If it's your desire, I'll just briefly try to go through those in the next couple of minutes.
What is the commission's purview on that? Do you want to go ahead and hear it? Go ahead.
Okay. So starting out, just to set the deviations in context, again, I think this is pretty obvious, but as the staff report indicates, we're having a 50-foot setback, 50-foot landscape setback along the arterials, and then along the retail, it's the future retail will be 30 feet. The streets are already in, so these are the public streets that basically are going to exist right now and be the fronts of this particular project, and then obviously the drive aisles go into the individual pads. All the garages are located interior to these pads. None of the garages are out on the public streets. So again, I don't want to keep on repeating myself, but all of these front-loaded streets, you're going to be seeing architecture, not the garages. What I've done here is trying to just distinguish between the 4-packs, the 6-packs, and the 8-packs. So this area here is the 1 8-pack. And again, the garbage is placed out in this area here. What I referred to earlier is this condition that exists right in here. These units right here, if you're somewhere in the middle, you've got to bring your garbage out to one of these streets, which again, we just eyeballed it, but it 1.5 times the distance of what we're doing in this one condition. The 8-pack is going to have to bring, this unit is going to have to bring it down here. And again, just to make perfectly clear, the 6-month hiatus that we took from July on, again, we spent a lot of time with the trash and the traffic department, and those trash bin areas are marked off. There's no parking allowed in those particular areas. So again, turning to this, these are the 4-packs. The orange are the 6-packs, and then we have the 1 8-pack. Go to the next one, Rick. Here's the easiest way that I can sort of explain, or at least I understand, the use and benefit easement. So this middle unit, and again, this is the picture that I showed earlier. Basically, the yellow line right here is the property line for this particular unit. This area that's number 1, which is basically here, as well as this, roughly 5-foot area right in here. This is the use and benefit easement that, although this area in the one is owned by this lot, there's an easement on it so that you can basically, the middle lot will be availing itself of that particular open space. And the use and benefit easement is not something that's new. I mean, it's been in place on a number of different projects, different variations of this, the Z lot type of situation. So this is not a new concept. But again, just so we're technically clear, the technical property line is right here for lot number 2 and for lot number 1, although again, the use and benefit easement in the area number 1 is the area that we'll be using. And by the way, the reason why that we are going, Rick, are you trying to?
Oh, you pushed it
Oh,
there.
sorry. I have a habit of blaming my staff. I apologize, Rick. So just so there's understanding of why we're doing this, it basically is driven by the building code and by the town's own code that there requires a 3-foot building separation between the property line and the building. So that's the reason why we do this use and benefit easement. This area here, that's where the 2 is, that's actually a patio area. There's 3 feet between that patio area and the property line. And I think there's roughly about 5 feet here, but that's the reason why we go through this use and benefit easement rather than just pushing this property line up to against this the adjacent home to the north, is because is to satisfy essentially the building code area. So with that sort of background, let me turn to the deviations and try to quickly walk through those. So let's go to the first one, which is the lot size. Okay, so let's go back one, Rick. In the 4-packs, there's no issue about the lot size. And the lot size issue is that we're seeking relief to go below 3,000 square feet. That is not present in any of the 4-packs. It's not present on the end units for the 6-packs or the 8-packs, the end units. The deviation is for the middle unit in the 6-pack and the middle 2 units or 4 units in the 8-pack. And let's go to the next one. Okay, so again, you can see that and this is a condition that is reflected throughout the entire subdivision because the lots and the units are pre-planned per lot. So you can see that the street is out here. These are 3,800 and change square foot lots, so well in excess of the 3,000. These are obviously beyond that. The 2620 are what we're seeking the relief from, and as Maria has indicated, there are 29 of these lots. It would be nice to think that we could just shrink these other 2 lots and take that area and average it into the middle lot. We can't do that because we have to set the buildings back from the private street because of utility easements and having clearance to work on the utilities with cranes. So we can't make these lots any bigger. The thing that I think is instructive, though, in terms of the lot size, is that this 2620 means that we're 380 feet short of the 3,000 minimum. But what this doesn't take into account is this use and benefit area. This use and benefit area, which again, although legally it is not part of Lot 2, it functionally acts as part of Lot 2. This use and benefit area is roughly about 330 feet to 350 feet. And so when you add this use and benefit area into the lot size, which again, I note legally it's not part of Lot 2, but functionally it is, you wind up with this middle lot being just shy of the 3,000, it's about 2,950. So I guess in terms of the lot coverage, or I'm sorry, in terms of the lot size, I would say number 1, it's going to be for 29 of the 109. Rick, let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. Next one. Okay, when you average the 4-packs, it's 3,500. When you average the 6-packs, it's 3,300 per pack. And when you average the 8-packs, it's 3,100. And again, let's go to the next one, Rick. No, back 2. And then again, my position would be that yes, this is 2620 legally, but when you add in the use and benefit easement, you're virtually at the 3,000. So that deals with the lot size issue. The next one is the building separation and the front yard setback. And what we're talking about is this area right over here. At the end of the drive aisle, we are seeking to reduce the building separation between the two homes is a 10-foot requirement. We're requesting that be reduced to 7 feet. In the city of Phoenix, interestingly, in the city of Phoenix project that we've developed, that building separation allows you to go down to actually 5 feet. But so there's a building separation requirement here of 10, we're reducing it to 7, and then we're seeking a front yard setback for each individual lot from 10 feet down to 3.5, because again, as Maria has indicated, the lot line goes to the center of this walkway, and so this the house is basically 3.5 feet from that center line. And in this area right here of the home, you basically have got you have a bathroom, you have a closet, and you have stairways, and you have the front entrance into the house. And by the way, this obviously meets building code. So while this area is it has been reduced to 7 feet. I think one of the interesting things is, let's go to the next one here. All of these units, these are the units that we're talking about, these end cap units. I think there are 36 of these, but all of them back up onto the open space. And so if there's a feeling that, hey, are these units going to be very tight? They're going to be claustrophobic. I mean, one of the corresponding benefits is that all of these situations back up onto these areas, these open space areas, and all of these backyards or fronting on or backing onto the open space will have view fencing. So that's the building separation and the one building setback. I promise you, if you just won't have your eyes roll in the back of your head, I'm almost done. The next one is to reduce the rear yard, and what we're really talking about is here. Obviously, this is the front of the house. This is technically the rear of the house, although how these pods lay out, this is really the functional side yard, because again, when we normally use the nomenclature of rear yard, we're talking about where's the livable area. Well, because of this unique layout, the livable area is really in these areas, not what is technically the rear yard. So we're seeking to reduce this area, the rear yard, of 10 feet down to 5 feet. Again, I look at this and say that this is the functional side yard. The side, if it were considered a side yard, the side yard would allow 5 feet in area. And so what we're saying is the functional rear yard, as Maria has indicated, this dimension between the buildings is about 19 feet. There's 3 feet here. This is 11 feet between the property line and this building, and it's a total of 19 feet. So although, again, we are seeking a reduction to 5 feet, in my view, I would argue that this is the functional backyard, not the area that's highlighted. 2 more, and then I'm done. The next one is to reduce the minimum side yard. And again, this is the area, this is the patio area, the use and benefit easement. We're seeking to reduce the side yard to 3 feet. This area here is the covered patio that we had shown you earlier in the photograph. The setback, the minimum setback is 3 feet. That's this area here between the patio and the lot line. This is the use and benefit easement. So again, I would argue that technically, yes, we're reducing it to 3 feet, but from a functional standpoint, there's over 13, or there's 12 to 20 feet of building of open space and separation between the buildings. And then also that covers that point. And then lastly is the lot coverage issue. And again, I want to emphasize that, even though we spent a lot of time on this project, obviously to the extent that the Commission's got concerns, ideas that you want us to consider, we're happy to do it. But in terms of the lot coverage, again, these are the conditions that exist on all of the lots. So the lot coverage for the street fronting units is 42% and change, under the 50%. And that includes, as Maria just indicated, that includes the patio cover in the lot coverage provision. For whatever reason, I wasn't here, but the lot coverages for these particular units don't allow you to include the patio cover, and the patio cover is roughly about 5%, maybe a little over 5%. So that, if we could avail ourselves of the 5% like you can in any other single-family districts, no lot coverage increase above 50% will be required here. But again, so it's 42% for the end units. The middle units are 51.8%. And then the units that are at the end cap units are two different lot coverages. There's two different plans for these. One is 55.8%. The other one, the largest one, is 61.7%. And so that situation, next one, Rick, that situation of where you have the 56 and the 61, I'm gonna just ignore for the moment the fact that the middle units have 51.8 and just sort of concentrate my comments on the end cap units. Again, half of them, there are 36 units that are depicted in the dots. Half of them, 18 of those units, could hypothetically be Plan 4s, which would be the 62% lot coverage. Half of them would be 56%. And again, we're willing to stipulate to those particular numbers. That's essentially it. I hope I've done justice to this. If you have any questions, feel free to fire away. I do want to end by saying that Maria has spent an enormous amount of time with us. I appreciate very much the time she's given me in bringing me up to speed. I apologize for the length of this, and again, to the extent that we can make changes in this to address your concerns, we're happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curley. Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Sippel? Oh, sorry, Commissioner
Well, I was going to.
Powell, sorry.
Appreciate your presentation. Thank you. Can you tell me what the square footage is of the actual structures that are going to be?
Yes, I can. They're ranged between 1,800 to 2,800 square feet.
And they're all two-story?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant? Commissioner Bianchi?
When you had discussions with staff and we heard from the traffic engineers, when they talked about the 20-foot the 20-foot widths and so forth, was there any consideration to widen that to give a greater turning radius or space this out a little bit, or maybe put a little more interior parking so it's not all forced on street? And what was the response back to that?
Yes, two things, Mr. Bianchi, and I've got to confess that I was not at all of the meetings with the engineering people. But I do want to clarify that again, just to amplify what was said by Tom, I think, and that is that the actual drive, the dedicated drive is 20 feet, but there's 2 feet of easement on each side adjacent to both houses, so there's a total of 24 feet of what I would classify as maneuvering room. That's a typical width of a drive aisle, and so. Again, I think I was in 1 or 2 of the meetings with the sanitation and the trash department. I'd be disingenuous if I said that they were jumping with joy and said, hey, we don't want any more. I think clearly, to the extent that they could have more to address their one issue, they would like to have more. But having said that, and again, I don't want to speak for them, but I think a fair characterization is that they've signed off on this. Would they like more? Probably. And yes, we've spent an enormous amount of time. I don't know whether Andy or Chris want to make any comments on this in terms of really getting down to the difficulty is providing this product on a limited infill site that you're basically, we don't have a blank canvas where we're just having, a 17-acre or 20-acre square piece of property that we can design from. We're operating within the constraints of a remnant parcel. And so I will tell you that the reason why this case is coming to you in January rather than July is because these were the issues that we wrestled with at nauseum. And yes, in answer to your question, we have tried to comply to the extent we can.
I guess I also appreciate you showing me the exhibits, I think, from Irvine as well. I guess one of the things I would have liked to have seen is if there was a photo of the built development with the parking situations or the small streets and give us an idea what that looks like, especially what you talked about, the 20 or 20 foot. And I guess that leads to my next question is, so when we get into this, we've got 109 units. I agree with your presentation where you say we're actually reducing the density here. That should be less of an impact to the neighbors, but it is still an impact. So when we're forcing all this parking onto the street based off the configuration you have, how do you guys how would you guys propose to enforce that parking to keep people from parking within the medians in between the units and so forth? Because it just seems like almost like a regulatory issue.
Well, I guess if I understand your question correctly, a couple things. One is that to park, it would be physically impossible for you to park in here without completely disrupting the lifestyle within these pods. I mean, these areas here, if you start parking in this area, the other residents, are going to have difficulty getting in and
Right.
out. So I don't think anybody has ever perceived this area as being a problem. And in fact, when you look at the surrounding developments have a very similar pattern. I mean, all of the go to the aerial, Rick. All of this area here is essentially alley loaded, and so it's a similar situation. And go back to the next one, Rick. So one of the things one more, please. One of the things that we have discussed with where the parking, where we're doing showing the parking. So when we originally came in, these parking spaces, these additional what I'll call gang parking, they weren't part of the original application. We were moving forward here, similar to what was developed in the other surrounding areas, because of sanitation's concerns that some of the areas in this area right here where the garbage was going to be picked up, the city wanted to make very sure that area was not going to be parked in, and so they asked us to look at the site plan and try to strategically locate what I'll refer to as the gang parking. And I think these three areas constitute about, it's either 19 or 20 spaces that we're putting in addition to the parking that could otherwise take place on the street.
And I think that goes to what Commissioner Peterson's point was when she talked about the trash receptacles and pulling those out. What's the distance that we think people will go to? So if you're having 109 units, you've got 80 parking spots that you've identified here in your plan. At what point do people say, you know what, I can't find parking around here, so I'm just going to, like you said, park in there and I'll only be here? It just seems like an issue to me that we're creating by this. So that's one of my large concerns.
And Mr. Bianchi, I mean, obviously we're all trying to read the tea leaves. We want to make sure that the situation, doesn't result in what the scenario you're describing. I guess, since I got involved in this in July, I've driven these neighborhoods numerous times, every time that I've come out here, and this situation is not different than what exists in the surrounding areas. And is there parking on the street? Yes, there is some parking on the street. I've never seen in any of these neighborhoods where the parking is taken, because each unit, I'm stating the obvious, I think, but each one of these units have a two-car garage. Every single unit's got a two-car garage, and so is it likely that you're going to result in a scenario where all the public streets are going to have cars parked in it? I mean, I haven't seen it. I don't think that's likely, but is it a possibility? Perhaps, but I don't think it's likely.
Thank you.
Just to follow up with that, I do live near a community that is similar to that, and I have driven by on numerous occasions, and I don't know if it's the existing homeowners of that unit, but they are parking a car behind the garage, parallel with the garage, right behind its opening in the same design. So it clearly isn't supposed to occur that way, but it is happening.
And Ms. Whitman, I'm sorry, you're saying they're actually parking parallel to their garage door?
Uh-huh. Any further questions for the applicant? Commissioner Cavney?
Go ahead. Back to the motor court. You mentioned earlier in response to Commissioner Bianchi's comment that there's a couple extra feet in there beyond the half easements. And based on the graphics, there isn't an extra anything, so I'm not sure that's the case. I don't know that terminates the discussion. I think that maybe these smaller motor courts could be usable. I am a little bit concerned about radiuses in and out of garages, but I'm still very concerned about that end backing out issue. What can be done, or do you think you can do something to alleviate that?
Mr. Cavney, I will stand corrected if I'm wrong on what I'm saying here, but I'm fairly certain the 2-foot easement does exist on both sides of that 20-foot drive.
I think on the exhibit it does, but I think it's on our exhibit, the 6-pack, it's showing as green space, like open space area. So
yeah,
I think they're counting.
I'm on the 6-pack exhibit, and it doesn't look like there's any excess.
It's clearly not a drive, but it looks like open space or part of the unit. So you'd be driving in order for you to use it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying from hardscape to hardscape looks like 20. Yeah.
I think they were saying it was going to be DG and maybe a rolled curb or something.
Yeah. But and even at the bottom, it does have the dimension 20-foot motor court. So
the pavement width is 20 foot, definitely. But
right,
I think they're trying to count in the DG area or the grass area or whatever else as part of that.
I think what I heard is that there's a couple extra feet there, and I don't think that, and based on the exhibit, I don't think that's the case. So.
And where it says on the 6-pack, or I'm looking at the 4-pack actually. I don't know. Attachment number 4.
Mm-hmm. It still has the same thing, 20-foot.
So 24, so the hash marks on either side take it 2 feet out on the additional side into the green space area?
Yeah.
That's what they're counting. They're not counting just the pavement area, they're counting
Okay,
the
well,
additional.
that's
yeah.
not drive aisle then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it's part of the easement. That's what they're counting as part of the easement.
Well, no, because up at the very top, the easement is defined by the 2 half easement dimensions. So I don't know what the 24 is actually taking. It's a utility easement.
Utility
Okay, that's
easement, yeah.
different. All right. So it's really not part of the drive aisle.
Right.
But in any event, I don't think there's not a case for narrowing streets. I've argued that before as well, and I think in some cases that's appropriate. Maybe this is it. But when we have no driveway length, I'm concerned about turn-ins. That's the issue.
Ms. Whitman, I've dragged the civil engineer up here, who typically civil engineers don't like to get in front of microphones, but he can answer the question better than I can in terms of Mr. Cavaney's question about the turning radius and the backing out radius.
Great, thank you. If you could give your name and city of residence for the record.
My name is Daniel Oxier. Place of residence is Chandler. Good evening. And again, I am a civil engineer, so please forgive me if I am a little bit nervous. This is not my cup of tea. When we were preparing this same exact product, same exact dimensions in another municipality, same 20-foot motor court, we used a program that's called Auto Turn that simulates the turning movements of a passenger vehicle, and we ran this Auto Turn program in the very worst case scenario. In other words, we were in the furthest space, in the furthest driveway, and we backed it out doing a 3-point turn. Again, it's a passenger vehicle. It's not meant for a dually truck, but we did show that it did work. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see those exhibits, and I appreciate you being here. I'm a civil engineer too, so I'm with you, brother. But anyway, it'd be nice to see those exhibits and understand, because right now, based on what I'm seeing, I'm having a hard time seeing how that's going to work. I'm seeing a car backing into a blind pedestrian walkway. That's what I'm seeing right now. So,
Okay, thank you.
That's
Any
all.
further questions?
That's all.
Comments?
Well, in
Vice Chairman Ayler?
Thank you. Tegan, I just wanted to see the photos, because you showed one that kind of showed where we're looking at the rolled curb and vegetation. It was one of your earlier ones. I just kind of see if that's the streets are the same in this one as earlier. Yeah, keep going. Well, it's going to be in here. So how wide is that street in that photo?
20 feet.
The asphalt is 20 feet?
Correct.
And so you're basically asking them to back into that other person's
Well,
garage.
yeah, and actually in the images I'm seeing, and maybe this is slightly different, there is, in our images, there's a wall that will be around that front door entrance. So you'd be backing either around that wall. Here you could back perhaps into the front door area, but that might even be tight. But no, in our case, in our images, we see some walls that apparently contain that entrance area to the home.
Right.
And that may differ with the model chosen, I don't know, but yeah. I just think anytime you have a dead end in a parking lot, they always have a little bump out to create space for that back out and turn around, yeah. So anyway, I'd like to see that addressed. I think that's an important concern, and maybe that's done. I tend to agree with staff on the lot coverage issue, which may mean that these couple of models on these end caps may need to be altered anyway. And here's a chance to maybe alter where the front door is and how that backing happens.
Commissioner Ayler?
And then on the parking itself for visitor parking, what are your counts? You have extra parking in your count right now for your visitor, or are you at your number right now?
Yeah, I think that the total number of there's 109 units. I think the total number of spaces, it's 19, and I think on street it's roughly about between 60 and 65, so somewhere about 85. The ratio I think is about a 0.87.
Okay, so you say you have 85 required? Or?
I don't think, other than, again, I'll defer to staff on this, but I think that other than the the parking that's in the garage, I don't know if there's any other requirement. We're basically went through this exercise of showing the parking on the streets. It sort of addressed the worst case scenario. If there's a Super Bowl party, is there going to be enough parking there available? And so the number of spaces that I just referred to were in addition to the 2 cars per garage.
Okay.
Other than, I think I may know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. For the end units and the reduced front yard setback request to 3.6, is that, I'm assuming that that's primarily due to the design of the 2 units on those particular end lots?
Yes, it's you can see that there's a pop out of those couple of what I said beforehand, the closet. I think there's a closet, there's a bathroom. And the front door are those elements, so they are a design element.
Okay. All right, any further questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Curley.
Ms. Whitman, if I could just make one more comment. I mean, obviously, I said at the beginning, we want to try to address your concerns. I mean, if there are serious, we prefer obviously going through tonight. We'd love to move forward on the schedule because this has been a real long odyssey, but we want to get it right. And so if we need to look at issues, and I don't want to say the word continuous because I want to get paid for tonight's work, but we want to get it right. So I just want to emphasize that.
Okay, duly noted. Thank you. Is there anybody here wishing to speak on this matter in the audience? I don't think I have any cards in the back of the room. Nothing, at least. Okay. With that, does the applicant have any, I assume nothing further to add. Does staff have anything further to add?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, no, we don't have any additional comments to make.
Great, thank you. Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais for discussion and motion. Who would like to go first? Commissioner Powell. I got it right this time.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's wise to examine these projects to make sure that we catch anything that might be overlooked and to do the best we can to produce a quality environment for people to live. In my mind, this is multi-family, and they're asking to change the zoning. If we kept it multi-family, we could end up with duplexes or triplexes. By approving the request to change the zoning, we end up, in my opinion, with a better product and probably higher quality product and probably a better living environment for those who choose to live in this area. So I'm pleased with what they were able to do, especially with the configuration of this, with this property.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Cavney?
Before I speak, though, Commissioner Powell, how do you feel about the staff's recommendation regarding lot coverage, and that be the one STIP not approved? Every other STIP approved, but that one. That's the current pending staff recommendation.
I mean, every other variation?
Yeah, variance. I'm sorry, variance. That's what I meant to say. Every variance. Yeah.
Well, I was just looking at it from an overall perspective. They got averages that I think work. They're excessive in a couple of the models. But again, we have a very unique configuration here. So I think they've done a good job trying to bring a good product to the table.
Okay. Commissioner Cavney?
All right. Yeah, I can tell that this has been worked on a long time. You guys have worked hard on this, and I certainly commend you, and I appreciate the presentations. Well done. When I studied this case over the course of several study sessions and then privately, it certainly is confusing. And so again, I appreciate all the hard work to make this fit. I agree that this is a better zoning for this property versus multifamily. So I certainly concur with that. I concur with how you're trying to fit it on. I think it's perhaps a little too dense, but I understand that this product can work. I've actually visited the KB website and looked at the product in Irvine. As much as you can see on Google Maps right now, it's still being built in Google Maps, but based on the website, some great images even beyond what you showed, so thank you. I have a little concern with the parking issue. I understand that's perhaps inherent to these alley-loaded projects. And I don't know that there's much more that we can do than what's been already provided, because you have dedicated 19 spaces. That's a good start at least. I wish there were more. I was a little worried about the setbacks, but I understand in those tight spaces that you've created some use benefit easements that have created greater space for those pinched by that. A little concerned with the narrowness of the motor courts, but I'm willing to say that's okay if we can just stipulate to address those end caps and how the parking works there. I think that regarding the one stipulation or the one variance that staff is recommending not be approved, I will endorse that because I think that's probably the right thing to do. That will require you to consider alternate plans for those couple of lots in between, not the end caps, but they're not the street fronts, but the others. I didn't see anything that would alter the staff recommendation on that. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson? No? You don't want to go yet? Okay. Vice Chair, or I almost called you Vice Chairman, Commissioner Bianchi.
Almost got a promotion there. You know, when we looked at this, I understand the request for multifamily. I understand the irregular shape of this parcel. But, you know, what we've talked about, what we've heard the applicant talk about, what we've heard staff addresses, really there are a lot of additional pressures on the street and the area that are going to need to be absorbed if it's developed as we're seeing tonight, as well as with the deviations. I think we're going in the right direction here. I'm having a hard time wrapping my arms around it to support the requested deviations. I understand the lot layout. I think the floor plans might be nice, but my preference would be it comes really down to parking and circulation and that absorption and the impact to the general area. So my preference would almost be to have parking or have a wider median, try to maybe put the parking in between that drive aisle rather than forcing it all out to the street. I realize that probably changes the product a little bit and pushes it out a little further, probably reduces a few more lots. But I think if we could do that, I get a lot more comfortable with the density, but probably might reduce the need for the deviations that we're requesting, probably loses a few lots, but then we bring that parking issue internal. I guess do you understand what I'm saying? If we take that middle aisle and we put just put some on-street parking there and increase that radius, I'm wondering what we could do there. But the way it's presented here, I mean, we've talked about circulation and sanitation. We've heard from staff that that's clearly not optimum. I know fellow commissioners have an issue with it. That we voiced here. I know I do. So the way it's presented tonight, I would have a hard time supporting approval for this.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sippel?
I too would concur with what's been set up on the dais here. My two concerns at this point are indeed the parking as well for the area. And I am more concerned with those the far ones, not the end caps, but the far ones, and just the safety concern that's been shared as well about those cars backing out. And, you know, it's inevitable. I think that, again, we can't have a crystal ball, but at some point I see, you know, you're building bigger homes there, which would warrant more of a family, right? 2,800 square feet, you're going to have maybe a kid or two, which is going to warrant a bigger minivan or SUV type thing. And I just see it ending up in someone's front doorway at some point in a backup situation, which again has been expressed on the dais. So I would concur with with the lot coverage concern as well, and would side with staff on that that stipulation as well.
Thank you. You ready to go now, Commissioner Peterson?
Thank you, Chairman. We have a product, it might be the one that the chairman referred to, that's on record south of the 202. I just happened to visit there, and it's very close to this product. The end units don't almost connect like these two. do, but it has the alleyways with the garages. And the one thing that I noticed when I went to visit, and it was a Saturday night in December, so maybe people were having a lot of people over, having parties and get-togethers and so forth, but the unit that I wanted to go to, there was absolutely no parking on the street, and it had a lot of parking. And there was absolutely no place for me to park. I actually had to park like a block and a half down and walk to where I was going, past a rotary and everything, so it was quite a walk to the unit that I wanted to get to. So I'm comfortable with the drive, the motor courts with the garages and no parking on those motor courts. I'm uncomfortable with the backing up into those front doors that Commissioner Cavaney commented on. I would like to see more parking on the streets. I think that you've done a good job. I don't know if we're just trying to put too many units into this location, and I think that was said in July when we saw this application.
Just as clarification, are you looking for parallel parking or are you looking for designated parking spaces?
Parallel parking. Because I think you will get one homeowner to park in their garage, but I think that the second one's probably going to park on the street. Mostly because, and Commissioner Sippel just brought this up, is we live in Gilbert and the vehicles in Gilbert are large. And we've discussed this a lot at the Planning Commission level, parking spaces in commercial areas because people drive larger vehicles. And very possibly, if they only have one child or it's just a couple, they might have smaller cars moving into here. But the odds are that they're going to be growing their family and they are going to be having a larger vehicle and they're going to have a hard time parking two inside the garages, and they'll park one and park the other one on the street. So I'm not sure that there's enough parking to accommodate the units the way that they're being presented to us this evening. I think that it just needs a little bit more work maybe, or I'm not comfortable approving it the way that it is tonight. I know that you've done a lot of work, Commissioner Cavaney said that, but I don't think that we're quite there yet, especially having just visited a unit like this recently.
Thank you. Vice Chairman?
Well, without repeating everything, because I'm pretty much on the same board as much of us on the dais, I guess bullet points is parking and just dealing with the alleys. I don't know if there's, I know there's 27 feet, and a standard drive aisle is 24 feet. But when you get to those end caps and you're getting movement, I just like to see if we could squeeze out another foot or two. If it's there, if it's not. I don't have a problem with the overall density. The setbacks and the shared use space between two different owners, I think, is a nice touch to the area. Allows you to have some indoor-outdoor usage to the actual architectural elements to the building, and that the buildings are fronted out onto the main street gives a lot more appeal to the building, where we're not looking at a sea of parking garages that they're only in these alleys. But I really do believe that we're just not there yet either, that we need to massage this just a little more to make it work. And so at this point, I wouldn't be in favor, but I could see a way if we were to continue this to, hopefully they could work out another way to make it happen.
Thank you. I feel similarly to many of the other commissioners here tonight, more specifically to Commissioner Bianchi's comments. I feel like the motor court pavement area isn't necessarily wide enough. If that could be widened, that would be fabulous. I do think that, like some of my other commissioners mentioned, the density isn't obviously a problem for me. I think the number of deviations that are being requested to make this product and the size of product work in this area is what really concerns me. And many of the deviations seem to be more than half reduction of what the code requires. And so that leads me to believe that rather than it just being a creative design, it's fitting a very large car in a very small garage and trying to make it work. And large cars aren't going to fit very well in these garages. So I don't like at all, I'm not excited at all about the reduction of the front yard setback from 10 feet to 3.6. That particular area really bothers me. But I think overall this plan could probably work. But as it stands right now, I'm not in favor of it. And so if the applicant, I think, is willing to go back and look at this a little bit more and maybe take some of our comments into consideration, and maybe there's design elements that could be changed or incorporated. But I do want to say that the 8-pack, like some of the other commissioners referenced, and the sanitation issue is also a huge concern. So I just don't feel that works well in a true livable environment. I think it sounds great on paper, and I think the people buying those units would be fine with it until they actually have to use it. And then they're going to think, who in the heck approved this? And what were they thinking? Did they really think we're going to have to trek this all the way down the aisle? So in general, those are my comments. What I'm gathering here from the comment space that were given tonight on the dais is that a continuance maybe is recommended or would be recommended if the applicant, and I'm going to just look for a nod, yes or no. And what we'll do then is, if it's commission's purview, we'll entertain a motion to continue maybe for 30 days, and then the applicant can determine at that time if they're ready to move forward in 30 days and go from there. Okay, so with that, is there a motion?
Can I so move that?
Yeah, he shook his head.
Yes. Applicant shook his head for the record, yes.
Do we have to do a date specific, or can we just say continued and then let them work on it and come back to us?
No, I think unless we table, I think we have to give a date specific.
Okay. I'll go ahead and move to continue to the February meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Peterson, a second by Commissioner Sippel. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate your time. We know it's been a long journey for you. Okay, and with that, moving on in the agenda to administrative items. Agenda item number 16 is the minutes. Commissioner Bianchi, this is consider approval of the minutes of the study session regular meeting for the December 4th meeting.
I did not have any recommended changes. Did anyone else?
I did.
Vice Chairman.
Nice. Commissioner Ayler,
Yeah.
you were on it.
Well, it's actually, I'm not 100% sure. It's a question. It comes to the motion I made for 12. Let me get to it.
On the study session or the regular meeting?
On the regular meeting. Because I had moved 12, because with 9, 10, 11, and 13, but I think I didn't write it down. I wish I would have. I had moved 1 to February, but it wasn't put in there in that motion, because I had separated one. They all carried to today, and then we had the sober living moved to February.
We did, right.
Right.
Mike wasn't going to be here.
And that's not noted in this. It shows up later in the actual portion, but
Did you
it
say
does
study session or public hearing?
public hearing.
Okay. So you're saying your motion didn't include a recommendation to continue to the February meeting?
February, right, for
Okay.
item number 12.
Okay. Maybe we can make that revision. Any further comments or changes needed? Okay with that, is there a motion?
I would move for approval with the following change that Vice Chairman proposed.
Okay, do I have a second?
A second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Bianchi, a second by Vice Chairman Ayler. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Moving on to communications. Agenda item number 17, report from the chairman and members of the commission on current events. We have a few. One, most importantly, and sadly, is we received the resignation notice for our fellow commissioner, Tony Bianchi. And tonight, unfortunately, will be his last meeting And so we are all very sad. Well, I'm speaking for all, I assume all, but very sad. No. Very, very sad to hear of your resignation, and we understand it's related to your job, and that it's not just that you don't like to hang out with us anymore and serve the town. There actually is a reason, but just know that we've appreciated the 8.5 years that you've served on the town in this aspect, and you will truly be missed. You provide so much to this commission. You always come so prepared to all the meetings. You run an excellent meeting as chairman. You're a great vice chairman. You're somebody who we all look up to because you're very prepared. You have your notes. You've done your studies. And so a lot of that will definitely be missed. And you've been a great example to all of us. So we're very sorry to see you go. Does anybody have anything further
We wish you great luck in your new job, Tony, and I wish it didn't mean that you had to leave us, because you have done a great job, but I completely understand.
Agree.
Yeah, it seems like 8.5 years went by. I blinked my eyes, 8.5 years went by, and it was amazing how quick. But I'm very fortunate to have served as planning commissioner for the last 8.5 years. I've had the opportunity to work with some great commissioners, both previous and current. I'm appreciative to council for the appointment, and then also a special thanks as well to not only our legal counsel and Margaret, our minute taker, but to town staff as well. So, I mean, to the planning and development services folks who work tirelessly and get us prepared for these meetings, and they always have a positive attitude, and the town is very well represented by these professionals. So with that, I bid you guys a goodbye. It has been a pleasure, but you may be seeing me in front of you from time to time in another capacity. So,
well, as long as we get to see you.
There you go. But thank you very much.
Thanks. I do have a couple more items, and then I'm sure Bridget has a couple. I noticed this year that going on the Town of Gilbert's website that they have a new website up, and so it's very exciting to see, because I think it now works really well with your mobile device, which before it was really difficult to maneuver with. So I think that's great. So check that out. GilbertAZ.org, I think it is, right? The
GilbertAZ.gov.
Sorry, GilbertAZ.gov. And then the third is, I know that it's been announced in the papers, and I think word of mouth is spreading quickly, but the Gilbert, Arizona Temple is opening soon, and it is open to the public, members and non-members alike. There is a website that you can reserve spots, and the website is gilbertmormontemple.org. And the temple is opening on January 18th to the public for tours through Saturday, February 15th. I know that having reserved a couple of slots, that those reservations have gone quick. I think they've opened up new slots, especially for Saturday tours. But it's my understanding, don't be discouraged, that if you can't get a reservation, that you can go there and they will let you in. You just might have to wait a little bit longer to get in. So anybody who shows up can go. But it's a great opportunity. It's a great asset to the town of Gilbert. So it's something that the public should definitely take advantage of. So with that, Commissioner Peterson.
The only thing I had was the new Town of Gilbert website, so.
Oh, I'm sorry to steal your thunder. I'll check with you next time. All right, and then moving on to agenda item number 18, report from council liaison, Jen Daniels.
Thank you. I echo the sentiments, Tony, that have been shared regarding your service to the town of Gilbert. I was heartbroken when I read your email today, and I want you to know that unbeknownst to you, you've been a great teacher to me, sitting in the audience, learning and understanding how zoning and planning works, and I appreciate the comments that you've made, and again, your preparation, your willingness to serve the town. So we look forward to big things from you in the future, and we also wish you luck in your new position.
Thank you for those kind words.
Just a couple other announcements. The Martin Luther King Jr. Gilbert Community Celebration will be held on Monday, January 20th. Starts at 8 a.m. and goes till 11:30. I think there's a couple different things you can come and go to, but that will be at the Higley Center for Performing Arts. The Art Walk at the Water Tower Plaza will be January 4th and 18th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that's just been a really neat addition to our downtown. And we want to remind you about the Gilbert Farmers Market. And you guys probably know a lot about that, but what a fantastic and smashing success they've experienced in the town of Gilbert. And I know that Linda and others, part of the Redevelopment Commission, worked very hard to get them up and running, and they just really have been a great success story in the town of Gilbert. So we appreciate you supporting them. Town Council's back in session next week for our first meeting of 2014, and we do have a heavy agenda. Lots of things that have been to your desk are now coming to ours, and again, we appreciate your hard work, your effort. We can't do it without you, so carry on. 2014 is going to be a good year.
Great, thank you. And agenda item number 19, which is report from Planning Services Manager on current events.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I did take a look at the last few years of building permits since we're just ended 2013. In 2010, it was 1062, bumped up to 1575, went even higher to 2411, and at the end of 2013, we were at 1927. Still much higher than all of the communities in the metro area. At the December 19th Town Council meeting, the Town Council did hear the major general plan amendment and decided to continue it to March. A lot of very good discussion, and thank you for the work that you did to bring forward to them, and then also the comments from the residents were heard again. So I will keep you updated, but at this time a decision was not made, and the council is looking to hear from staff in January with an update, and then back to the hearing in March. For the Town Council meeting next week, we will see the Topgolf rezoning, and on the same night, Topgolf at the Design Review Board. And Town Council will also review the college text amendment to permit that use in village centers. What I did have fun doing was looking at the accomplishments that the Planning Commission have made, especially it made me think about how much the Commission has worked on in our community because Tony expressed his career dilemma and needs to leave. Well, Tony, in just the year 2005, the Land Development Code for the town of Gilbert was adopted, which changed the fabric of the development standards and just a new development code in our town. A use permit for Burge Mazda Volkswagen was approved. Can't even imagine, it's been that long already. The first rezoning on the bridges and a plat was approved for 2,400 lots on 469 acres. Main Street Commons rezoning was done. The public safety facility across the street was rezoned to neighborhood office and general office, and look at it now. It's just, a centerpiece in our community. And the height in zoning was approved for Gilbert Mercy Hospital, and look at the medical campus that has grown up with another additional over close to 300 acres master planned around it. So thank you very much, Tony, for your help on this.
Most definitely. Sadly, with that, do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everyone.